The mind of Christ. Intrinsic knowledge versus accumulated knowledge. I have addressed this in many of my writings and videos, but here I want to drive home the difference of the two. Intrinsic versus accumulated knowledge. In my series, Christ in You, the Mind of Christ, you discovered that this mind of Christ is heavily dependent upon intrinsic knowledge, and only using accumulated knowledge at the direction of the Holy Spirit's guidance, not based on His teachings, but the teachings of God the Father. Jesus, in the mode of a Son of Man, did likewise, claiming that His teachings weren't His own, but those of His Father and ours. Here's one of the writings I used in one of my videos. It's called The Intrinsic Sons of God. Before their fall, Adam and Eve had intrinsic abilities, inherent powers. Before I go on any further here, I feel the need to define a few terms. First being this word intrinsic. It's defined as essential, actual, being a part, element, or quality of a thing, inmost being. The word inherent carries this word further, being an essential part of something. The word congenital takes us deeper into our subject matter, existing from birth. Now I want to focus on just that, existing from birth, from new birth. Under our fall of Adam, we don't have a intrinsic knowledge. We heavily depend upon accumulated knowledge. To understand that, existing in or belonging to an individual inherently, you inherit it. To natural birth, you inherit the carnal mind of Adam, the fallen mind, and dependent upon accumulated knowledge. Now being born again, coming to appropriate the fact what God has accomplished by placing the mind of Christ in us, not just so-called Christians, but in all men. Christ is all and in all. I've manifested that in another video. People don't accept that. If you don't get that mind till you accept Jesus Christ. Well, it's there. It's hidden as a mystery, yet to be revealed by an act of the Holy Spirit. It has to remove this element of our carnal mind and flesh. Like a seed, that's the outer shell of the husk of that seed falls, breaks up, dies. Not until then is the seed manifested. The seed of Christ in you has been manifested. The hope of glory, restored lost glory of Adam. To gain that new mind. Let this mind be in you which was lost in Christ Jesus. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds. It's new to us. It's hidden, buried in the seed and the outer husk of race, cultures, and creeds and gender. Keeps that seed from ever coming to life. So this word congenital takes us deep into our subject matter, existing from birth, existing in or belonging to an individual inherently inborn to new birth. The symptoms of intrinsic are as follows, or synonyms of this word intrinsic are as follows: ingrained, inbred, inborn, essential, elemental, deep-seated. Deep cries under deep. Constitutional, built-in, born. Remember what Psalm said, God, He had set eternity in the hearts of mankind. And John confirms it by saying, He lighted every man that come in this world. Ain't just the Jew and Israel, not just the religious people. All men have this opportunity, but they have to let some degree their mind, carnal mind, go to gain the mind of Christ. When I first got this word intrinsic, I was ordered to look up its meaning. What a wealth of knowledge was revealed through just one word. This study came about because of one implanted word. James brings out to receive the implanted grafted word. If I think I'll put that up here on the screen, the engrafted word of God. Let me pause and get that real quick. Well, here's that text, James chapter 1, verse 21. Wherefore lay apart all filthiness, superfluity of naughtiness, or the carnal mind, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls. Use not mind independent from God. If you keep using this mind, this carnal mind, independent from God, and don't gain the mind of Christ, that carnal mind is on its way to dying. You throw out God in your life, and God gives you what he calls a reprobate mind, using the mind for which it was not intended to be used for, independent from God. You wear it out. You know? This is linked to senility, is linked to Alzheimer's. Now, we're all guilty of this, using the mind totally independent from God. But at some point in life, if we surrender our carnal thinking and wait on the Lord to our spirits, to the mind of Christ in us, he'll save that soul of intellect and emotions. And by an act of your free will surrendered to God and his input, I mean, it gets easy. It'd be easier, but we don't wait on the Lord. We sit there and wrestle in our brains, worry about things, try to figure things all out, not realizing, as Paul said, we're not sufficient ourselves to evaluate anything. Yet we do. And you wear your mind out. So let me now pick up where I left off reading here. Before the fall, Adam and Eve had intrinsic abilities, inherent powers, intrinsic, and they did not have to learn things, for they were created with the needed knowledge. It was ingrained in them via birth. For example, photographic memory with instant recall, built-in language, ability to comprehend that language. Had Adam and Eve not fallen, their children would have been born with intrinsic abilities. Period in the womb. Now here's some speculations which can be confirmed. It comes out later in my other videos and writings. So the period in the womb was longer. Would have been just 9 months. No, we are saying things unknown. Now, how can I can't prove this. We've never seen this happen. So understand, what is shared here appears as speculation, open to questions and input. Why do I say the period in the womb was possibly longer? After the fall, it said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrows and thy conception. Possible more births because of the shorter time in the womb. It's a question. Let's go on with this speculation. Before the fall, the time spent in the womb was longer. Why? There would be a longer period to which the intrinsic abilities would have been developed due to the inherent nature of an unformed child. The child would have had intrinsic abilities to even assist in its own birth. Thus pain involved greatly multiply the sorrow after the fall. That's pain involved. And an intrinsic son unformed to the loins of Adam. Adam unformed, his children would have been unformed. But the iniquity of parent visits to the fall of Adam. Imagine, no pain in birth. The child would not have resisted birth. It would not have been forced by time or nature, 9 months as we know. But after the fall, the birth period was shortened to fixed period of 9 months. Like a judgment. They multiplied their conceptions and I saw her. The curse upon Eve. 9 is the number of judgment. Now, thus, there would have been a lack of time for intrinsic abilities to develop. Birth would have been resisted in ignorance by the child, fear of the unknown. Whereas before the fall, the child would not have had the fear of the unknown. He would have had intrinsically known and welcomed birth into this life. He would have been spared, or it would have been prepared from the womb. After the fall, the child being unprepared with a greater demand, totally dependent on the mother, helpless. His education process would encounter distractions and limitations. It would have to struggle to learn, to comprehend the world around it, and a lot would have to be learned by trial and error. The conscious mind would become dominant, and the subconscious slowly suppressed. Give my straight heart and the subconscious mind. Bring a lot of this out. Howbeit that before the fall, the subconscious mind had been dominant, and the conscious mind heavily depended upon it. If the fall had not occurred, all born would have known intrinsic things. No one would have to teach them. No one would have to say, "Know the Lord," for all would have known it from the least to the greatest. Paul brings that out in the book of Hebrews. Let me get that verse real quick, put it there. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 11. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. All is all. Not just the Christian. It's all, Jew and Gentile. The potential to have the teachings from the Father is available to the mind of Christ, which was a mystery at that time in the Old Testament, revealed by the Apostle Paul in the New Testament. So I put here, this is one of the reasons I believe that this mind of Christ is all and in all. It was something that the Apostle Paul came to discover, calling it the mystery, Christ in us, the hope of glory, restore the lost glory of Adam. As for our being taught, Paul comes to understand that even those in the Old Testament knew this, yet it being hidden at that time, didn't fully understand it. Now here's Jesus expressing this matter, which Paul taught, having this mind of Christ in him, which was in Christ Jesus. Same mind Jesus as Paul. John chapter 6, verse 45. It is written in the prophets, the Old Testament, and they shall be all taught of God. Every man therefore that had heard and have learned of the Father comes unto me. Though the first Adam lost this for mankind, the second Adam, Jesus Christ, our Lord, as the mode of a Son of Man, gained it back. Think about that for a moment. It comes out in other videos. I have a separate study going on with this one. It was given as the scaffolding. That comes out in my courthouse assembly. Look on that playlist, courthouse assembly. I talk about the scaffolding, the building of the church, this courthouse assembly. Every single word developed by the Spirit of God. Without repeating that here, let me briefly say that it developed the idea of the ultimate intent of God's purpose of building the church. Thinking beyond the building as most think. It's called out something, ecclesia. Yet using the idea of a building structure, seeing scaffolding as a needed element until the building was finished, and the scaffolding would come down. Let us say that God intended to accomplish something in the first 100 years of the early church. Paul expressed it in Hebrews. Then the scaffolding of the apostles, prophets, the evangelists, the preachers, teachers was to be removed. The building being finished. Each man would know the Lord. They would understand this mind of Christ. It would have been preached. And no one would have to teach them about knowing the Lord. Each man could go to the Father and get their teaching. Yet this didn't occur. The scaffolding remains until the day. And if this is the case, it is the case. With that, let me now introduce further input on intrinsic sons of God. I'm now thinking more on the scaffolding piece given to me, having begun by the Spirit. The first generation of Christians, the early church, this called out Sunday, had in its grasp the ability to be the first generation in which God would have accomplished his intent. What was his intent? restored to one generation via Christ, the second Adam, in them, the mind of Christ, what the first Adam had lost. Intrinsic knowledge. The second generation thus would not need to say to one another, "Know the Lord," for all would have known him from the least, second generation, to the greatest, first generation, being born with the knowledge of him in the process of new birth, fulfilling the task that Jesus gave, his lighting every man would have been known. The world groans and moans, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. We know that. Romans chapter 8. That generation of children, with the restored second Adam, with inbred, inborn, inherent, intrinsic ability, sadly nature still waits, as we do as well. It should have been. Having begun with the Spirit, are you now being brought to maturity by the flesh? Cut off from God, your race, cultures, your secular religious opinions, and your ideas of male and female? Self-will, religion, and secularism reigned. The sons of God are not manifested. Is it too late? Can this generation see and hope that the next generation will manifest what God intended to be? We could be its beginning. Just see it. Questions are welcome. I saw many of them, I'm sure you do as well, on the speculations offered on the intrinsic sons of God. Really, it's the truth. It's not speculation. Here are a few I am working on at this time. David said, "From my mother's womb was I conceived in sin, and I was shaped in iniquity." The question is, this was before the resurrection, before the coming of the second Adam. Does this apply to us after the resurrection? Did what Jesus, the second Adam, accomplish offer change? He did. I am being reconciled back to life. Question, should I then be becoming younger? Think about that. Now, this is some more speculation. It comes out in my rights of the unborn Adam. Though the outward man is decaying, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. Think of Paul's comment in Romans 12:2, and stop assuming an outward expression that does not come from within you. It is not representing what you are in your inner being, what God accomplished, Christ in you, but is patterned after this age, expanded Greek translation from Weiss. We are called to put on the inward man. Question is, why don't we? Is it possible? Live out the inward man. As the outward man is decaying, he'll sustain your life, keep you from premature death. Comes out of writings. These are a few questions. Answers are forthcoming. Share yours. I put this out to others as an email. And I tell you, that was like 25 years ago. I put this thought out by the intrinsic sons of God. That's just one piece. So moving on, here's another email article I sent out years ago that touched on this matter of intrinsic. I've gotten away from it, the Lord had reminded me. Kicking in intrinsic knowledge. Matters are moving so fast. To gather from accumulated knowledge has become next to impossible. Remember, knowledge will create, men run to and fro throughout the earth. Men drive me nuts. At the speed of change and accumulated knowledge. I have over the past 2 months sat up many times way past midnight thinking to do this, trying to play catch up. You got to keep up. Kind of like playing catch up. Tonight I see where it is not only impossible for me, but also for others who thought to do the same. Give us this day our daily bread. I mean, you got to do this daily. Just before typing this, I was conversing with my father on this, and the word intrinsic came to mind, and reminded me of things given to me over the years on this very word. I recalled that it meant inborn, and not something gained via the traditional education route we all know, Knowing the Lord It takes on a totally different idea than those of the world might think. Inborn has a lot to do with what was given to us all at new birth. Knowingly or many times unknowingly, don't you know it? It is imperative that we get this intrinsic ability to kick in for us now. I can't stress this enough. You're going to become dependent upon it. You don't know what to believe anymore. You're never like a pilot when your hands in despair saying, what is the truth? I don't know if there's enough time for some who have never saw such a thing or believe it existed. You have to go with your reprobate mind. I don't know if there's enough time for those who never saw such a thing or believed it existed. I am hoping that all of you to have at least heard or read some of these things I've shared in the past will have had it happen to me tonight, having had this triggered of this word intrinsic getting you to remember what I've shared. I feel I can't go back and pull these notes up to refresh your memory. Well, I'm doing it right now. I may not be able to do this again. It fits the 10 version story if you can haven't gathered this all by now. Now it might be too late. Their salvation was based on that. They lost their salvation. Understand that? 5 were wise. They gained the mind of Christ. The other 5, they weren't those left behind, as some misinterpret that 10 version story. God has to say to the unwise 5, depart from me, you who worked iniquity. I never knew you. My God. They weren't saved. They weren't left behind. They get raptured later in mid-trib view and perspective. Well, let me read on here. So, with hope in view, I take it that you're following what I've been warned about. Kick in your intrinsic abilities starting now. If you don't understand this, know that you can ask for it if you lack knowledge of this ability, the intrinsic knowledge, the intrinsic mind, the mind of Christ. Get it to run your day by day, cares and fears. I can't be explaining how I've done as I have done in the past anymore. So I will give out only those intrinsic things I will get via short emails. This matter of intrinsic is a start. This matter of our past server was another. I won't try to explain that now. It's a long drawn out. I might share it sometime in another video. Our past server has a lot to do with the cup of his shed blood and our communion idea, getting past the religious idea of the communing. Well, I won't do that right now. I might bring down another video. Our idea of a past server. I have thought to develop it into a rather long explanation, as it is my nature to do this. You all know this by now. My long emails and articles. But was told to delete it. I now have 2 pages to this and told to stop. What I'm reading to you is 2 pages long. He said, now stop. That's enough. Don't overdo it. Sometimes we get overkill. Instead of helping somebody, I mean, you lose their mind after the first page sometimes. So here's another article that brings out this matter of intrinsic knowledge in light of AI, artificial intelligence, today. I believe this comes out in my series, The Heart and the Subconscious Mind. I figured what part it was. AI will be superior to the collective minds of men. I believe this. The devil had wanted the mind of Adam, which was the mind of Christ, to surrender to him, which was expressed to Adam's subconscious mind. I mean, he had full potential of the conscious, subconscious mind, and the mind of Christ working through him, having contact with God the Father, which is expressed to the Word, Christ, the Word, to the mind, which was surrendered at that time. But when he surrendered that subconscious mind to the lie that cut him off in the area of his heart. Cut him off from God. Get it much serious. Heart and subconscious mind explains what this matter of the heart is. And the heart is deceitful above all things, desperately wicked. You can know it. God revealed the heart. The devil's lie got into the heart, which produced the sin nature of Adam, which gets inherited to all of us. God has to undo what's been done to us now. Well, so I'll get off another subject. Let me keep going here. The devil isn't any longer dependent upon the collective consciousness. You see that in New Age, man. The collective consciousness, it's a joke. The collective minds of men. Oh my God. The devil isn't any longer dependent upon the collective consciousness of frail, weakened minds of men. He has for some time now turned to AI, artificial intelligence. The same demonic spirits, fallen angels that were in Noah's day, are the same we see after the flood and today. They would have the teachings of the world before the flood with the addition of some 4,000 years added to it. We hear of New Age channelers. That's where they get their information from. Getting information from spirits thousands of years old. These are these fallen angels disembodied after the biblical flood. Call them demons. God after the flood made changes that had humanity lose longevity of life. Their intrinsic abilities were exchanged for accumulated knowledge. Knowledge retained by these demonic entities. Thus, we see the reason why things that have taken longer for those on this side of the flood to come to where those before this flood came to in a shorter period of time. God and His ultimate intention and purpose of this total experience will consummate it when He wants it consummated. Humanity, along with evil, did not have a clue just how long this would play out. We, those who would walk in the light of the season light, would know that it is near, even at the door. We would know because He would share this with us to an intrinsic mind, not the carnal soulish mind, second guessing, second coming. How God's going to be made back in 2000 when Howard Camp and his ideas. Those who walk in the light as season walk would know that it's near, even at the door. We would know because He would share this with us. We would come to know what was meant, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall be in the coming of the Son of Man. We would understand that. We, without a doubt, are in these times. But Noah's day accomplished with men, in that short time, machines will do what frail, weakened humanity could not do. AI is, without a doubt, the beast, the spirit of Antichrist that has been working to accumulate this knowledge, fed into artificial computers, robots, which have been working all down through human history, even growing, expanding, expressing this will of all that is anti-God and anti-Christ. The spirit of Antichrist is a mimic of God's expansive expression of God, ultimate intention. Listen to a video of this on the web, and you will see that AI has grew and is moving at a faster pace now than ever before. There are guys out there that do that. I mentioned that back then I was into other people's videos. I don't go to Jason. This guy Jason on YouTube. You'll find it. I ain't got a link there to it. I don't know if I wouldn't recommend going there. All he's doing is taking headline news and putting him into a video. I mean, it's powerful what he's doing, but he's post-trib. He believes we're all going to be here for all that stuff. I mean, yeah, he will be. That's what he believes. He'll be here for the whole tribulation period, which is crazy. My series, what I call it now, Confidence of Deliverance, debunks all that. I mean, as far as my mind is concerned, others still fight that. They want to go with some mid-trib or post-tribulational idea. I don't do that. And my idea of pre-trib is simply based on one fact. Those with the mind of Christ on the day of Christ, and knowing the difference between the day of Christ and the day of the Lord. Those with the mind of Christ on the day of Christ leave. Now, think about that. Well, let me see if I got any more on this thing about the intrinsic knowledge. Oh, here's one more, and I'll close out this video with this one. I don't know where I put this at in one of my videos. The tree of accumulated knowledge. So right here, as I sat here this morning with a cup of coffee, I asked my father, "What is your word for today?" The title of this article came to me, The Tree of Accumulated Knowledge. We have all heard of it as the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Expressed in the light of accumulated knowledge, it gives this tree found in the opening scene in the book of Genesis without even more meaning. Think with me for a moment. Adam was created with a full working knowledge, intrinsically inborn, thus a working knowledge of the language he would use and a basic understanding of the world he was placed in, upon which he would build by comparison of one thing against the other. It is said that he named the animals. There definitely was more to this naming them, more than just cat, dog, and stuff like that. He had insights that we today, in a so-called civilized world, had lost. Something you will find, something of what was lost with the fall of Adam, in what might be called uncivilized areas of the bush or jungle, aborigines, they can go tracking off in the desert and not die. We would die. They, being uncivilized, must depend upon intrinsic lost ability to be all once possessed. Place you and I in the jungle, and within a week we would die with our civilized limited knowledge and abilities, right? Where's my cell phone? Right? Where's McDonald's at? Where those who lack our educational system survive and laugh at us, not knowing, to their view of things, not knowing the simplest matters such as the difference between two trees or terrain. We, without compass or map, would end up lost, whereas those who have lived there all their lives would have had these things inborn, handed down from one generation to another. I believe that it was Dr. Francis Schaeffer who said something to this effect. If we identified today with evolution and monkeys, we would be old-fashioned. Today, modern man identifies with the machine and sees himself as doing faster, but the slow process of evolution took billions of years to accomplish, using our accumulated knowledge via computers and technology. That's what they're doing with genetics. They're trying to speed up evolution. Yeah, they'll end up killing us, right? I also remember him saying something to the fact that they see time's arrow evolving higher, when in truth, time's arrow is pointing downward. The more advanced man appears to be, the further they get from true truth. His use of this term, true truth, he used this term, true truth. By it, he meant God, using this simply because he ministered to the intellectual crowd of his day, and just the use of the word God would turn them off and put them into a defective frame of mind. Many of those of the accumulated knowledge crowd, this college degree crowd, see themselves almost as gods, and it's hard to reach them. They have this thick wall of required speech and defense, speech that only those in their ranks understand. So that when you talk to them, they kind of laugh and see you as an idiot. You're not the sophisticated. You're not trendy. You're not the new millennialist. The only thing that can overcome them and shut them down to give you a moment to minister to them is this thing of our understanding that this inborn, intrinsic wisdom knowledge, once lost, has been restored to Christ in us, the mind of Christ. You can do that. Now, if you go with your carnal mind, you're going to look like an idiot. They'll prove their point. But if you wait on Christ at those moments, he'll give you an input. Not any, not any religious or New Age idea of Christ in this. Getting past that, there's all kind of ideas about that. But simply realizing what Adam lost that day when he had thought he could go to this tree of knowledge of good and evil and act independent of God as the source of wisdom and knowledge. I've used this idea of a battery in other pieces I have written, and now look to this to explain what I mean. See in born intrinsic ability as simply a battery given to us fully charged. Yet if there isn't a greater source to keep it charged, in time it dies. In the Bible, this dying is called a reprobate mind, usually the mind independent of God, what God intended it to be, only a storage area of the charge only He could give it. Something about human efforts to do this blows the battery up. You blow your mind. And the natural idea of this, if you don't know what you're doing when you go to charge a battery in your car, the warning is given that you could have exploded in your face. You do that, use that mind even of God. You'll blow your mind. We're having this excessive influx of knowledge today, via our technology, about ready to explode in our faces. Get into research on this movement called transhumanism, you'll see what I mean. Sure, they have learned the trick of supercharging the battery, but they're not reading the warning label on the battery. We have seen where too little is too late, got a video on this, and too much too soon can be devastating to our lives. Only the creator of this battery knows that it is done moment by moment, slowly over time. Humanity, cut off from him, always blotches the job, sad to say. So in closing, this article, take this warning. Do not plug into this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, this tree of accumulated knowledge. Allow God to do what He knows to do and does it right. Allow Him to daily give you a working charge and keep the flow flowing. The other day, my wife's car wouldn't start. Here's an example. My son, who's a mechanic inclined, did the following to find out what the problem was. He charged the battery for about 2 hours, then tried to start it. He found that the battery was dead, no longer could hold a charge. He also checked to see if the alternator was bad. The alternator, for those who don't know, is that thing that sits on top of your starter. A fully charged working battery, with the turning of the ignition key, starts the electrical charge to the alternator to the starter, to the spark plugs that then, in turn, ignite the fuel in the cylinders of the motor, turning the motor over. With the motor running, the alternator keeps sending an electrical charge to the spark plugs, thus keeping the motor running. The battery at this point isn't needed. Its only purpose was to initiate this whole process, which I just said. So in light of this, what humanity, cut off from God, is doing is trying to do what only God can do, thinking to do it their way. Expect an explosion soon. The minds of men are going to blow out. You've seen today, some of the so-called politicians today, the way they talk, they're worse than a child. Their thinking and their actions, their decisions. Like Pelosi saying, we got to vote on this to find out what's in it. How can you vote on something you don't know what's in it? Anybody would see that and they would say, these people appear to be idiots. They're losing their mind. And they say that of one another. Democrats say against the Republicans say against the Democrats. They're all becoming a reprobate mind acting independent from God. So let me end on that. This matter of intrinsic knowledge compared to accumulated knowledge. We want to develop this intrinsic ability. Lost by the first Adam, regained to Jesus Christ and the mind of Christ in us. So God bless you.